Yeah, welcome. We had a good visit today from our governor on the state of state. I think we agree with some of the things that he wants to propose. On the legislative side, we're going to focus more on the families and taking care of the Idaho families, especially with what's going on with inflation and the economy the way it is. We agree with him, though, on some of the things, and we're probably going to have some disagreements on the detail and the others. A lot of concern about his budget, a little higher than I think what we're being told it is, and the good majority leader will kind of go through a chart with you on that and explain that to you here in a minute. But we do agree on the need for some facility work. In fact, if you remember last year on House Bill 292, the bill that the governor vetoed, that bill started the process for us to put money into building buildings for our schools and taking care of our schools, if you remember that. And if you remember that debate last year, we said we would like to, this year, allow some bonding there for those school districts that had money go through the bonds and the supplemental so they could build their own buildings without going to the voters. So it sounds to me from what he said that he's kind of headed that way. Devil's in the details. We'll try to make sure that, sorry when I ran up the stairs, we'll try to make sure that when that bill comes that we protect the families, that we provide money for schools and the students. But we're going to want to tie it to the buildings where the kids are at, right? I always have a problem when we treat some better than others, so hopefully as we delve into the details on what his proposal is, maybe we can find some common ground and work to figure that out. But again, we'll probably want it on the House side, at least I hope, focus on 292, where we've already started the process to get that money to the facilities and building. I don't know what all you want me to say. I think more like you should ask me questions, I think, so why don't we start off with
that first?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you want to go through the chart?
What we wanted to do is make sure that that the budget proposal was really transparent. This is the governor's budget proposal. This is not the legislative budget proposal. And if you look at it, there are some big differences. So what he is saying is for his general fund budget is an increase of 2.2%. That's not the actual budget increase for the governor. The actual is more along lines of 7.8. And we gave you a quick one-sheeter on why it looks different between the two aspects. He's asking us to pass additional legislation that would shift money from one place to another so that his actual budget looks like it's 2.2%, but it's actually much higher. So, and one, if you look at the pie chart, I don't know that any of us thought that was the best way, but that's what we got from LSO. If you look at the yellow, which is Health and Human Services, it's actually not even accounted for within the smaller 2.2% growth because it's paid for through shifts. So we wanted to make sure that everybody understands what it looks like, what the actual proposed budget looks like, and that it's not just a 2.2. It's actually much higher that he's requesting.
Makes sense. One of the concerns that we have, at least that I have as speaker, is that the last few years we've taken this unprecedented move as we've taken away the ability to use the sales tax revenues for general fund obligations, health and welfare, education, things like that. And we've done that by putting it on autopilot, right? So right now, local governments, we subsidize them to help pay for property tax and keep it down. That's about 20% all the sales tax. And then you add to that the money we give to the schools. Remember the school money we put in the budget last year? So it adds up today in this budget cycle, 40% of all sales tax is spoken for. It goes on autopilot. That's a concern, right? Because you get to a point you're not going to have any money to take care of, education, health and welfare, public safety. So as we look at his budget, one of the things he does do is, again, goes into that sales tax revenue and tries to grab those revenues instead of allowing them to go through the process. He grabs them ahead of time and puts them on autopilot again. That's dangerous. It's like putting all your paycheck on autopilot and not having an ability to undo some of those things they're going to. That concerns me. It puts the state in a bad place coming forward. Makes the budget look low. It's a budget gimmick, but it is not good for the state of Idaho. It won't be good for our schools. It won't be good for our public safety. It won't be good for health and welfare. Health and welfare is a real concern too. If you've watched as Medicaid is getting out of control, we were sold, in my opinion, a bag of goods on Medicaid expansion. Cost has gone up. Other states require hospital assessments to pay for that. I think if Idaho's not careful and gets that under control, we're going to be in trouble too. So there's kind of a two-front concern I have there, the Medicaid and the expenses there, and putting all the sales tax revenue as it comes in on autopilot. Any other?
If you guys have questions, we might be able to come up with an answer or two.
what do you think of the concept of, putting millions and billions towards, the physical school buildings in order to cut down property tax and also get that, I guess, refurbishment done?
Okay, so I'll go back to what I said earlier. House Bill 292, the one he vetoed last year, that's what we started. My concern is that under House Bill 292 model, we took care of the existing bonds, we took care of the supplementals before we allow them to go bond for buildings. I haven't seen the details in his bill to know what he's doing though, so I can't comment on that till we see, because it's really easy to say we're gonna have $2 billion to do something, but are we putting more of our general fund or our sales tax revenues at risk? I just don't know without seeing the detail there. So we agree on the concept of helping build the buildings, but again, the devil's always in the detail, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we can't take care of all those other essential government services. The other concern I have is if we go down this road, which is why we did 292, we've got to make sure that we don't allow this to be a mechanism or excuse to raise property taxes, right? To go to the voter and say, well, the state built the building, we need more supplementals, or the state did this, so we need more. Sometimes you see that happening. You saw that last year with the property tax bill, right? We cut $317 million property taxes at the same time, not the schools, but just the local governments was almost $80 million increase. 3-4 years, all that we gave you this year will be gone. So as we do this, we got to make sure that we don't create a situation where we incentivize more government growth or funding for places that we don't think is necessary.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, kind of a similar question, because you mentioned you wanted to tie that sort of funding to the building where the kids go to school. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Just because, at least in my mind, I'm interpreting that as you don't necessarily want to build new schools, but more go toward maintenance or whatever.
Well, it depends on the school district, right? That's why we did 292 the way we did, so they could use it for maintenance or a building, right? Because some of them do need the maintenance, and we want to address that. The reason I bring it up where the kids go to school, though, is under House Bill 292 last year, we tied it to the attendance, average daily attendance. We're seeing a situation now where kids aren't in the school building, but the schools want paid, and the children aren't there, right? We need the kids if they're going to be in the building, and we're going to send money for buildings, then that's where the money ought to go, where the kids are going to building. We don't need to send money to a school district where kids aren't going to a building, they're doing an online class somewhere else. So there's this dynamic, and the devil's in the details, making sure that the money flows to where a child is sitting in a desk, not flows to in a building, a school building, and not flows to a place where the child's not even, heck, they could be in Mexico or Africa or South California or Florida. The problem is that they could be anywhere online, and we need them to be in the buildings if we're going to send the money to the building.
I think, too, if I can add on to that, part of the struggle that we've always had is there's a baseline for keeping the lights on in a school, right? So if you look at Glens Ferry School District, whether there's one kid in the classroom or 30 kids in the classroom, to keep the lights on in the building, there is a fixed cost that isn't addressed by the per kid model. So yes, we need to figure out how to include that as a baseline for basic facilities for kids that want to go to public school, but additionally we have the concern about making sure that they're populated schools.
And there's some other concerns there too. The state sends back, I think it's around $65 million a year for facilities. And now we're finding out that maybe some of that money that was sent to keep the lights on or take care of facilities isn't necessarily going to provide those services, right? So some of the school districts, not saying that it's all, but there may be a few that the money's not going where it was intended. We want to make sure we clean that up too. If we're going to send in money for facilities, let's use it for facilities. What else? Yeah.
Is the launch grant program pretty ambitious, by the way?
I think
it sounds like a great program, but if you have X amount of dollars and X amount of kids,
well, you're picking winners and losers again, right? You've got some options, right? You could lower the amounts, you spread it out, but you're talking to a guy that's not been a big launch fan, if you're well aware of. It's another government handout. One of the things that concerns me with launch is that sometimes when we're given something for free, we don't really take care of it like if we had to work to earn it. And I do know that there's a little bit of talk about, and the good majority leader can talk about that, of a clawback so that the students that get the money, that we make sure it gets used for those programs. If it doesn't, that they send it back so they can use it for another student that is. So there's some things that need to be addressed with launch. And I know that there's some bills coming forward to kind of clean that up, which will help make it a better program and help make it so that more get it. But there's still some issues that haven't been clarified yet in statute that probably ought to be clarified, and I think we'll do some of that this year. But I still think it's pretty ambitious, you're right. I still think there's a lot of kids that are going to get left out that aren't going to be happy. And I just don't like when we hand out government programs and we pick winners and losers. So the devil's gonna be in the detail again, and it's gonna be a learning curve as we go through this, but I think we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. But there'll be some fights before we get there, I
The
think.
kids in the video were pretty good, man. Some
Yeah,
kids,
it did.
right?
Yeah. I like the way they talked about my money, a couple of them. I'm like, oh, come on, man, that's a
Used
taxpayer.
properly, there's a lot of opportunity, right? If it's implemented properly and it's used properly, there's a lot of opportunity with launch. And I think that's what the speaker's getting at, is that if it's implemented well and is successful, then these kids that we have never bothered to give a single bit of help to because that they aren't interested in a 4-year degree, this gives them an opportunity. So alignment, like was discussed in the governor's video. But that also means that you have to be responsible for that. And I will tell you, there is an existing clawback in the system. So if you want to get a welding certificate and you change what your end path is, you have to pay back the state. So it's not just free giveaway to everyone. Additionally, if you have other scholarships, they come ahead of the launch grant. So these are last mile dollars, right? This is that you do multiple steps before you even get them. And I would probably argue, without looking at the background on the numbers the governor gave us, there's probably some of those kids that have been pre-approved for the grant that may not even get to use it because they'll have other sources. So we tried to be as tight with the use of those funds as we possibly could.
The other interesting thing that we need to watch too, and it concerns me what goes on now with the technical classes, right? You have some of these kids, it's out at CWI the other day. You got these kids that'll come into the welding class, for example, and it's a 2-year program, and they leave the first year. Well, they left because they had a job, and they got a good job, and they're happy, right? They took their skill, they didn't finish, but they're being successful, and that's what we want, right? The whole idea is to get them jobs, get them tax-paying, happy, staying in Idaho, working in Idaho. And so as we look at this, we got to be careful we don't penalize those also that they may not have finished the second year because they had a job in mechanics or in welding or whatever the job is. So there's a lot more work that in my opinion, needs to be done on law.
Mr. Speaker, any plans on further income tax reductions?
Heck yeah. You don't give up that easy, do I? Come on.
Have you met Representative Moore before?
I ran over tax relief. We've done a really good job and been on a roll. It may not be as much as I would like, but I would still like to see us do some more relief. I think if we can adjust the rates just a tiny bit and pass 4 more states on our way to being one of the lower end income tax states in the nation. So yes, there'll be something.
I don't have the list off the top of my head. What does that look like? 5.5, 5%?
Well, if you get down under 5, if you can knock off about 1.25% from where we are now at 5.8, you pick up about 4 states. If you know what they are.
What do you think of the governor's proposal to kind of round out the rest of the bridges that need to be fixed, kind of really investing in infrastructure? Do you think it's doable?
Oh, absolutely. We made a commitment to do 3 tranches of $200 million each. We've done the first 2. The last one's as important as the first one. So yeah, I think we'll get there. And I'm pretty sure that will be one of the few that's not really debated. We all know that's important. Roads, we've spent a lot of money the last few years trying to bring up that infrastructure. And I know people get frustrated. I'm as frustrated as the rest of them with, having to move around all the construction. But when it's done, it's such a wonderful thing that it's a good thing. So yeah, I think that one will be an easy sell there.
We got some details on the private school tax credit bill on Friday. I was wondering if you think this debate might go differently this session as it has in years past.
I think there's an incentive this year to find a solution, and I think the tax credit's got more support than some of the other methods. And so I think this year you'll see that issue get to the governor's desk. What he does with it, I don't know. But yeah, I think they're getting closer to working together. I know enough of the devil's in the detail. There's some of those things that I'm not a big fan of the bill. There's some that I really like, but I think they're trying to find that. They're working together to try to find a solution. So I think it'll be an easier sell this time.
You mentioned an incentive to get it done. Is that the election or is it incentive?
No, I think it's just that more people. There's more support to do something there, and the support keeps growing. And as that support grows, we're gonna respond to that support as legislators and get it done.
To kind of follow on that theme, the governor made it pretty clear that he wants part of his legacy on education to be solving the facilities issue. You've got folks in your caucus who believe that part of their legacy is to advance school choice. Is there room for both this session?
Yeah, I think so. It's done right. If it's done right, I think we can get both done. And again, I don't know enough about the governor's proposed facility to let you know. I just know what the House did last year in regards to that session as we took the lead on that. And I know what our plans and intentions are this year, we may have to adjust them a little bit to help, bring in some of what the governor wants, but I think we can work together to find that.
Oh, Brian? you have
And
something else?
sticking with that bill proposal, the sponsors said they want caps on how much money will go to the tax credits. But they also said they'd be willing to look at expanding that in the future if there's high demand. Do you have any concerns that that could become a runaway program like it has with Arizona?
Well, I think that by having the caps, you know what you're gonna get, right? You know where the limits are and where we can play, and then once you have the caps in and have it run for a while, you'll know what you need to do to adjust it, right? Because you can prevent the runaways if it's done right with the caps. In fact, I've encouraged them to have the caps so we make sure we don't have a problem that others have had when they've opened a program up like this. The caps, I think, are helpful.
Representative Lunsford, for the past couple of years, you've been working on trying to, narrowly tailor the abortion exceptions in Idaho code. Can you give us, an update on where you are with that, since Speaker Moyle, I believe last week, told us that, you and others have been working pretty feverishly on that over the summer?
And I think, yes, we've had lots of meetings, quite a few meetings, tried to have meetings with pro-life groups and with physicians. And the one thing that we have identified, which I've discussed before, is that we want to make sure that physicians feel comfortable practicing in the state. We're just talking about standards of care. And so we're looking at what we can do for physician recruitment and retention, ongoing discussions, particularly with local hospitals, on how we can have that look. There's also other things around the trigger law that we've looked to support pregnant women, looked to beef up our foster care system, looked to make adoption easier in Idaho. So a real focus on families, and Idaho families, and what we can do to support them. And so, yes, it might not be what some people are thinking specifically, but yes, we're trying to work around that. We don't want to lose our docs, and we want them to feel comfortable here. And we think that the language outlines well enough so that they can provide standards of care. And it's just trying to work with them and really explain how the law is written.
Quiet.
Can I go to lunch now?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Keep in touch.
You got it? It's pretty cool.